Before we start, just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gather, even as we do so via electronic means. And we pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging. And CORF acknowledges the very important roles of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples right within the outdoor recreation community right across the state. And we also acknowledge the support provided to CORF and the outdoor sector more generally by the Queensland Government. Welcome to the latest session of Coffee and Conversation. My name's Dom Courtney, I'm Executive Officer of CORF. And we've also got Mark Squires joining us. I'm not sure if Hubertine's online, and also maybe Angela Wright, our Nature Play Queensland Program Manager. I want to, as I do each week, acknowledge the members of the CORF board, Alana Bowl, Denise Cox, Ray Buchanan, Andrew Critter-Boyle, Murray Stewart, Ross Barnes and Peter Gould, and thank them for their services that they provide to CORF in a volunteer manner, but a very professional volunteer manner. And also CORF's life members, Dave Batt, Donna Little, Kathy Kingsford, Brian Cross and John Wood, and for their contributions to the outdoor sector across Queensland. Welcome to everyone who's joining us, whether it's your first time here or you've joined us every week since we started these. I think it's almost 3 months ago now, so welcome. As I said, we'll make the recordings available via our website, and anyone else will be able to view them as they come along. Just a reminder too, on our e-news subscription, there'll be we'll send out a monthly e-news next week. Yeah, feel free to let other people know if you've already subscribed to that. It's a great way of getting information out there to people right across our industry. Agenda, it's very similar to last week's, but there's a few different topics coming on here. But if there's anything else that anyone would like to discuss, please say so. Really is, happy to bring in other topics as we go along. And these sort of things really are about what you guys need rather than what I would particularly want to talk about. So I'd rather have feedback about what are the big red topics, hot topics that need discussion as we go through. As you'll see from the list there, it's a bit of a long list, but the bottom half of that screen is really all about the COVID safe planning, which obviously we'll get into quite a bit of detail. But I've just got a few opportunities, I guess, to start off with, as we've done the last few weeks. We'll get into that, but please feel free to use the chat feature if there's other features there, and we'll get going. So thank you. This is the same, I've mentioned this last week, but there's plenty of training available, free training from TAFE Queensland. And that's for there's skill sets training for Queensland residents who are job seekers or workers impacted by COVID-19. And there's also some really good training on there for small and medium business operators, which is free if you meet their eligibility requirements, which are actually quite open, I believe. So that's a good option. Have a look at the TAFE stuff there, but also on the right-hand side of the screen, the Active Queenslanders Industry Alliance has, they've actually launched it this week, industry-specific training to assist recreation, fitness and sport organisations return to our work. And that's about alignment with the industry COVID safe plans. So that's a really good piece of work that AQAA has been doing. And there'll be plenty of good work there, I think, that will help us to implement our plans, but also to ensure that they have full understanding of the bigger picture, I suppose. I also just wanted to mention again the Queensland Government's Return to Play Restart package. So it's actually been extended. The Active Club's Kickstart has been extended until next week. I think the 30th of June, that now closes. So it is definitely worth having a look at. I believe the system has been simplified as far as getting applications into that compared to previous years. So I'd really encourage people to have a look at that. It's specifically for not-for-profit organisations in there for clubs. So I don't know, Kathy, did you want to speak about that one at all, or I'll put you on the spot a little?
No, I can just add. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm Kathy Rogers and I'm from Sport and Rec with state government, Department of Housing and Public Works, Sport and Rec. And yeah, the $2,000 to encourage everybody or anyone who hasn't applied, it is a really easy 5-minute click through. It's $2,000 that you can use fairly flexible use, certainly on equipment or training, but even things like paying an electricity bill. You know, it can be operationally used as well. And it's very, very quick to do. So it's, you know, there's a lot of raffles that go into trying to raise 2,000. And this has been extended to the 30th of June. And you can apply anytime up to 5 p.m. on 30th. So yeah, certainly do it, but not for profits. Yeah. With sport or recreation. Yeah.
I guess $2,000 for 5 minutes work is a pretty good hourly rate. So I'd highly recommend that one for anyone like members of clubs for the executive to jump in and get an application in. The Seek Outdoor Jobs portal, that's still available and it's now live. So it's just a matter of sending in the Seek ID numbers. If you send that to me, we've had a couple from Queensland who've already done that, a couple of organisations. So there should be some ads popping up in that outdoor portal shortly, which is about attracting more people to the outdoor sector, particularly as we get up and running again. So it's just an opportunity there. I just wanted to bring it to your attention again. We've also the Inside the Outhouse sessions, which Pete Smith from ACU has been running at the funky time of 17 minutes past 4 on a Monday afternoon. Last week it was all, this Monday just gone was all about use of tech in outdoor ed programs, and we've got Dave Hills from the University of Sunshine Coast and Brisbane Grammar School, and also former CORF board member. He's going to speak to us a little bit in a minute, but I just wanted to flag there for next Monday. There's still a bit more. Pete Smith, I think you're online. Did you want to speak about what's coming up on Monday, Pete?
Sure, Dom. Good morning, everyone. So next Monday we have insurance person inside the outhouse talking about insurance and as it relates to outdoor ed and outdoor ed programming in the post-pandemic world. And then we also have some feedback from where each of the states are at in terms of their returning to things in the new normal following the pandemic. And we're hearing from, I believe, Dom from Queensland is going to be there, Victoria, and Western Australia will be speaking to us in the outhouse this Monday. So hope you can join us there. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks, Pete. And yeah, the insurance topic is obviously a critical one at the moment. There's been a bit of media coverage on that, on insurance providers contracting what they make available. So it's certainly an important topic. So I encourage everyone to join us for that session on Monday. And yeah, I look forward to maybe seeing you again there. It'd be great. And there's details there as far as joining those sessions if you haven't already registered for them. Next up, I just wanted to give Dave Hills, as I just mentioned, Dave spoke at the Inside the Outhouse session on Monday just gone, but I wanted to give Dave the opportunity to speak about his PhD study that he's doing at the moment through University of Sunshine Coast. And I'll just hand over to you, Dave, if you want to have a chat about what it's all about and what you're seeking from the industry.
Great, thanks, Dom. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, mate.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for giving me a few minutes and morning to everybody. So yeah, we launched a study on Monday. I've just put the link to the study in the chat thread at the moment. We're looking at the inclusion and exclusion of digital technology in outdoor education with the aim of hopefully developing resources for the sector and for instructors. The study launched on Monday in Australia, the UK, the USA, Canada, and New Zealand, and we've had a phenomenal response already from the sector. It's been fantastic. There's obviously many strong opinions on this topic, and it's really good to start to collate all of that evidence. It's obviously great as well to get Queensland onto the world stage in outdoor ed in that respect, which has been fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to have a look, it'd be great if you could jump onto that link and do the survey. We're looking for anybody that delivers outdoor education in any capacity. So please jump on. It just takes 5 minutes, and it's mainly multiple choice questionnaires. And also, if you can support us in sharing the links on social media, the links are there to Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and LinkedIn. We really appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave. It's interesting. It's going to take 5 minutes too, so I'm sure Dave will pay you the $2,000 that the Queensland government was making available through those grants earlier. That seems to be the going rate at the minute. So it's very, very generous of you, Dave.
No worries, Dave.
Yeah, I would recommend everyone have a look at that survey, all the outdoor educators, but also share it with others across the industry. Let them know it's out there so that Dave ends up with a really good picture of people's opinions on technology in the outdoors. It is a bit of a divisive one. There's obviously a place for technology, but people don't want it taking over some of the, the old school techniques that we have. So it's certainly a really interesting topic. So thank you, Dave, for putting that one on the agenda.
No worries. Thanks for that, Dom.
No worries, mate. I'll pass that around to my interstate colleagues too, through the OCA. Andrew Knight from Outdoors Vic's on the call today. I'm sure he'd be interested in sharing that further as well. So
yeah, well, most of the peak bodies are in the process of putting it up. And yeah, look, thanks for the more support we get, the more we can produce. And just to say, we're looking at both sides of the coin there. We're looking at including it and excluding it equally as well. We're certainly not promoting tech. We're just trying to look at both sides of that debate there. And it's really interesting to see what comes out.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, Dave. We're just moving right along. I guess this is all about the COVID safe business situation in Queensland. This slide, I think I've shown a few times now since it was updated. It's all about making sure every organisation knows to develop their own workplace health and safety plan that includes COVID measures. That's the first step that we've needed right from the get-go for every organisation that's operating. But then it moves into the COVID safe checklist for high-risk industries, and it's got a list there: beauty therapy, tattoo parlours, etc. We don't fall into that space, but it does have ones about dine-in services such as restaurant, cafe, RSL clubs, etc. So for organisations that are providing dine-in food, that is an important part to consider and have a look at the requirements there. So that's when we get back to business, that sort of thing needs to be considered. And the COVID safe training, that's the stuff from TAFE as well, which is mentioned there. So it does need to be done. And there's a big focus on training for staff and volunteers in the industry plans too, which is the next stage of this. So I'll just move right along. Our industry COVID safe plans, we submitted the outdoor recreation activity provider plan and the outdoor ed provider plan. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. The time has blurred a little. The outdoor rec activity provider plan was approved last Friday afternoon. So really happy with that. So the option now is that you can, providers can opt into that plan if you choose to. It's a voluntary system for anyone, whether you're a member of CORF or not, it doesn't matter. The plan's been published on the Queensland Government website. It was published on Friday afternoon, but it's actually had a few little updates on there, which was based on some feedback from the Chief Health Officer's people. So if you have already accessed it, please have a look at the updated version that's on there. So there's just been a few tweaks to it. One of the things that they actually made more clear is that the plan is not suggesting that the use of the COVID safe, the federal government's COVID safe app is mandatory. So it's optional. And that app, I guess, is not the silver bullet. Then they're saying you cannot just rely on, our people are going to use the app, therefore we can get on with doing normal things. So they wanted that made more clear in the final plan that was approved. So we've made that tweak in there. So please have a look at the version that's on the government website. And just to keep you all on your toes, as we get towards stage 3, we're actually looking at revising that plan again already. So to make adjustments for what stage 3 means, the plan that's already approved does talk about stage 3, but there's already been a little bit of change of thinking as far as what will be allowed at stage 3 and potentially some further relaxations on top of what we've already got in the plan. So stay tuned for that one. There's actually a National Cabinet meeting today, and if the past few months are anything to go by, every time there's a National Cabinet meeting, there seems to be changes to the level of restrictions. So I'm certainly going to be very carefully checking on what comes out of the Cabinet meeting, and as far as when stage 3 is going to kick in here in Queensland. So that's an important piece to look for. I've got a picture of the statement of compliance there. If you do opt into the plan, you do need to show that statement of compliance at your venue or even where you're operating. If you're operating in a national park, you should still have that certificate visible, at least where you start from, that sort of thing. I don't know, people might laminate it and stick it on their back, but if you're not actually running a venue, but it is an important thing to show that your organisation's opted into the plan. So we also wrote last week to the Minister for Education seeking an indication that state schools would be allowed to return to school camps in term 3. And I'm not going to take credit, but on Friday, the Minister for Education wrote and released a guideline to state schools, to the principals, saying that would be implemented, that schools would be able to return to camps in term 3 as long as the providers have an approved industry plan. So that brings us right along, which is a great development. New South Wales doesn't have that yet. Victoria does, WA does, South Australia does. I'm not sure about Tassie. Andrew, you might know on that one. Does Tassie, are they right to go to school camps? Andrew Knight?
I'll have to check and I'll circulate that back around to everyone. Thanks, Dom.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, and the Northern Territory, they've just been getting on with their normal world anyway. But yeah, so it is a good thing. It's happening across the country, but and it's great to have that confirmation through the Department of Education. I've already mentioned that we've got the outdoor rec activity provider plan approved. I was pretty happy to stick that approved watermark on top of that one, but it has been a little update. Yeah, one thing I do want to mention on that, and this applies to the outdoor ed plan once it gets approved, touch wood, shortly, you don't need to send your updated operational plan to CORF. You do need to update your operational plan to assure it aligns with the protocols in the approved industry plan, but you don't have to send that to CORF for approval or anything like that. It's an internal document. You might need to send it to land managers if you operate on someone else's land, or if you might need to send it to your insurer because it's an update of your workplace health and safety system. But you don't need to send it to me for approval. You don't need to send it to Queensland Health. I'm not sure what the rules are in relation to Education Department operations, if they need to send it into head office or that sort of thing, but you just need to check where that needs to go. But yeah, don't bother sending it to me. I've got enough things to read at the minute. Yeah, it is an important part of it. If you want any feedback on how to implement that, we're here to help with that, but it's not about us reviewing your operational plans. You're the experts as far as your working environment. Just the outdoor ed provider plan. We're now up to version 11 of this plan. We got some feedback on Monday from Queensland Health. We've addressed that and resubmitted the plan on Tuesday. This industry plan is proposed to start from the start of stage 3 of the Queensland roadmap, so which is currently penciled in as from the 10th of July, but as I just said a little while ago, that decision hasn't yet been made. I just want to highlight the key requests or the suggestions that we've put in this plan, the protocols, are firstly that venues will be allowed to be split into self-contained zones, and each zone could handle a separate group of of students and teachers and outdoor ed staff. So that's an important part to say that a venue can handle multiple groups. We've requested that the 4 square metre rule be relaxed for the accommodation of school-aged children. So that's an important one too, to make the plan workable. We've also requested that physical distancing be modified for school-aged children. We're basically making the point that school camps are an extension of the school environment, and the 4 square metre rule and the physical distancing rules have been, of 1.5 metres, have been modified in the school setting. So we're trying to have that applied to the school camp setting. So again, physical distancing, it is required in the outdoor recreation activity provider plan. We've asked for that to be relaxed for the outdoor ed providers with school-aged children. And we've also requested that groups be allowed to exceed the limit of 100 people if all of the school-aged children and teachers come from the same school. So that's an important piece as well. So you can have a larger group. The roadmap specifically says 100 people, but we're under the industry plans where we're seeking relaxation of some of those rules. So that's sort of the plan in a nutshell. As I say, it's not approved yet. The latest draft version is available on the Corf website, and I think it's the only place it's available at the moment, but it's not approved, and that comes with all those conditions that, you know, we've put it up there so that people can go through it and compare their operational plan or prepare in advance, but just be careful because things could change depending on what the Chief Health Officer's people and the Chief Health Officer herself is going to adopt it. So Mark shared that link, I think, on the Corf website. I'm just looking at some of the comments there. Andrew Grant's made an observation that we've got the guidance from Education Queensland, but Catholic education doesn't seem to be observing it fully, which is interesting. And then Tanya's made a point to say Catholic ed schools from Brisbane have postponed till next year, and that's disappointing. And I don't know what we can do about that other than once we get the plan up and running, it might be worth even providing some case studies once, you know, some of the state schools are back in action, provide some case studies and maybe testimonials from those school principals that you could then provide to the Catholic education system to say, look, this is not the end of the world. This is an important part of the education. So maybe we need a little separate campaign there to try to get the Catholic education system back on there. I would, if we don't mind. G'day, Noel. How are you, mate?
You're good. I just want to make a comment on the Catholic schools. A majority of our camps, we work with Cath Ed, and they can't give us a commitment.
Yeah, I've been told that the Catholic education system seems to work region by region or diocese by diocese within their system. Yeah. And they seem to have different rules and regulations from location to location, which I guess that's part of their decentralised model, but it does make things frustrating from one place to another. So I think we're just going to have to get on the bandwagon once we get things up and running with particularly state schools and independent schools, and try to show them that that their kids are missing out by not being able to go to outdoor education centres. So there might be a little bit of pressure there, but it's also about understanding what their drivers are, I suppose, in making that decision, whether it's coming from the school level or at the regional office level for them. So I think we need to do a bit more work in that space. And if anyone has particularly good contacts either at the school level with some of the principals or deputies, and also or with the central offices of the Catholic education system, I'd be happy to speak to you about that, and maybe we organise some sort of hook up with them and see if we can get some information to them once we are all back up and running.
I think principals are fairly nervous too, have to be honest to say, from the feedback that I'm getting.
I can speak to that as well if I can.
Yeah, David, go for it.
having been around for a while, historically the Catholic education system across the states is, as you said, but also historically they're quite conservative. They're the first to, in the past when we've had risk management, insurance and a range of things, they were the first to pull out of the outdoor industry. Or cancel things like caving and things they saw as risky, and they're normally the last to come back in. So I think your idea of getting some good hard facts, and I think we've got to work at the diocese level, through the bishops and the church hierarchy. They've got a lot of say in that, and then work our way down. With this is safe, and this is why it's safe. So it's achievable, but we're probably going to have to put a bit of work into it.
Just write a letter to the Pope, David.
I think lots of people do that. But anyway.
Okay, thank you, David. I noticed there's a few other people. Phil Harrison's on the call too and works for Tinaroo Outdoor Ed Centre. Phil, did you want to speak about, I guess, the effect of the direction last week from the Education Department and what's going on now with Tinaroo and other outdoor ed centres that you've spoken to?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. So with the directive from Education Queensland last Friday, the 25 Education Queensland outdoor and environmental centres across the state, not all of which are residential, some only do day visits, but particularly for the residential Education Queensland owned centres, the guidelines state that they need to follow the Education Queensland boarding house guidelines, which apply to the 3 Education Queensland boarding houses. So there's 3 public school boarding houses in Queensland. And so the outdoor and environmental centres are required to follow those guidelines, not the industry COVID safe plan. And part of that involves obviously following the guidelines that have been updated. We need to complete a risk assessment on a Department of Health, Queensland Department of Health template, which I did for Tinaroo last week or earlier this week. And then that document has to go to the Health Service Public Medical Officer or Public Health Unit for comment and feedback about your risk plan. The risk plan says nothing about activities. It's not interested in the slightest with activities. All it's really interested in is food, accommodation, and what is your outbreak plan. Once it's been commented on by a public health officer, then has to be submitted to the Education Queensland Regional Director, and a copy has to be given to the local disaster management group.
Right. That's an interesting process, Phil. So I guess the other one is, if you're getting comments from your public, for your public health unit, they're different again regionally across the state. So it'll be interesting to see what feedback Tinaroo gets on their plan compared to what maybe Maroon will get down here in Southeast Queensland or other environmental ed centres and outdoor ed centres get right across the state. Because I'd imagine the centres will be talking to each other about, here's, collaborating on this, because if COVID-19 has done nothing else, it's increased the level of collaboration right across the state. And I know that the Education Department centres already had a high level of collaboration.
Yeah, Dom. So I'm aware that Maroon have submitted their plan to West Moreton Health region. And the 3 centres in far north Queensland, so Holloways, Darragee and Tinaroo, submitted theirs on Friday, or submitted theirs earlier today or yesterday. So it's just a very different process. We've used the industry or the outdoor education provider COVID safe plan as a bit of a guideline. But because the questions have nothing to do with program or activities, they're only about public health matters, it made it significantly easier to fill in.
Half your luck, Phil. So I guess the part of that, I suppose, is still on the operational way of delivering the activities. So that's going to be an interesting point too with the approved industry plan for recreational activities. So it's still there, I guess, to provide guidance again to anyone who does want to adopt what's in there. Thanks very much for that, Phil. I do appreciate the update, particularly from within the Department of Ed, which is really good to have. Thank you for that. I'm just scrolling through some of the comments. Yeah, there's a few comments about Catholic Ed putting responsibility back on principals. So I guess that comes back to us, like I say, getting some of this, getting the confidence levels up to show them that we are competent at dealing with this situation. Andrew Grant's just put a point there about the principals. It's creating a perception they've got more responsibility and have to do more work. Yeah, I think there's a perception of that. It's a funny thing because at the end of the day, that seems to be Education Department's default is at the end of the day, they say, oh, it's really up to the principals to make a decision in relation to any perceived high risk activities. So I think the principals have always had a level of responsibility like that. But yeah, I'm not sure on that side of things. And then Andrew's question was, has Queensland Health given an indication they'll allow less than 4 square metre distancing for school-aged children? That one, they've come back to us and asked questions specifically about that. And I went back to them and said, so that the system that was imposed by the AHPPC, the Australian Health Protection Principal Committee, they had a system previously of only 25% capacity for particularly boarding schools. And they took that out in that statement last week, which I've actually got a copy of here or a link to. They took that statement out about the 25%, but Queensland Health have come back and said, how important is this relaxing the 1 per 4 square metre rule to you? And I said, it's critical. And I said, we can't go to 25% capacity as well, because that would mean that the industry could not operate. So I've gone back to them and said, without, if you impose either of those two conditions, our industry will basically collapse. I was trying not to be too melodramatic, but I wanted to tell it like it is so that they understand the importance of the relaxation. And I made the point that we're only talking about relaxing it for school-aged children and that we would strictly enforce it for all adults at all centres. So I'm still waiting on feedback on that. I was literally checking my emails at 2 minutes to 11 this morning to just in case we had some good news to share with you, but I haven't got that yet. So I'm just looking through the rest of what Andrew said, expecting outdoor ed environmental centres to follow boarding guidelines makes it seem to parents and teachers that the rest of the industry is cavalier because the boarding guidelines are a lot stricter. I think maybe it's potentially that the Education Department is taking a slightly more conservative approach. It's certainly, that seems to be the situation in New South Wales. They're being quite conservative, whereas down there, independent schools are already back at camp, and the Education Department down there in New South Wales is saying maybe not until term 4, which is a lot of outdoor ed centres in New South Wales are in a lot of trouble about that. So yeah, I'm not sure they're saying the rest of the industry is cavalier. I think they're saying they have a different way of managing it. So Benoni's just asked in there, can we get the link? I'm not sure what that link was to. Benoni, did you? It might have been a few minutes ago. Do you want the link to this AHPPC statement? Is that the one? Ah, yes. All right. Yeah. So I'll see if I can drag that off my screen, or maybe Mark can grab that. It is at the bottom there, but I think maybe the subtitles are blocking it out. Yeah, Mark, if you can share that one, if you don't mind, mate. I think we did post it on our website. It's worth having a look at that statement that the AHPPC published last week. It's a bit difficult, and what we've asked for in the industry plan is about modifying some of that to particularly modifying the 1 in 4 square metres, which is a key part of it. I have got some text of that situation. It actually does talk about having reduced numbers and that sort of thing in there. So I think we need to be very careful on how we do it. And I guess a big part of all of this is all of the stuff we're doing is not about going back to business as it was 6 months ago or 12 months ago. It's about going back to business in a safe way in a COVID environment. And even though there's not a lot of COVID-19 across Queensland, we're very fortunate at the moment as far as the diagnosed cases in the last little while. We just want to keep it that way and make sure that we're delivering these important activities in the safest possible way and making sure that we are delivering it responsibly. So I don't think anyone here needs to be told that again, but I just wanted to make the point. So Andrew's made a point there. If they don't give us the 4 square metre relaxation, we can't use it, we won't use it. Yeah, and that's pretty much the point that I've made to them. I said, without that relaxation, there is not much point having the plan, because you could just use a tourism accommodation plan and the outdoor activity provider, outdoor recreation activity plan, and you can do the same thing. So the outdoor ed plan is critical because it makes a distinction for school-aged children particularly, and it's only about the school-aged children is the key part of that. I just saw Todd's one about discussions with QPWS regarding their stance on no school camps under their plan. I believe that is being looked at, Todd. I haven't got anything definite on it, but I understand that they are looking at it and that it is on the agenda. Basically, I think Parks, they've taken an interesting first step. Was they're only going to open up bookings for 1 month, and they've very much restricted numbers. And particularly around even group sizes around toilet blocks. I think as stage 3 comes along, you'll find that things will ease up a lot. The QPWS, I actually was speaking to someone from there last week or the week before, and they actually told me that when COVID-19 hit, they actually had $1 million worth of cancellations as far as camping bookings and permits, and other permits over a month. And the first week that they got the industry plan out there and started retaking bookings, in that week they had $1 million worth of bookings come in. So they are getting hammered right now as far as people lining up to visit their sites, but they haven't dropped the outdoor ed industry off their radar. I'm sort of still talking to them and making sure they're considering us within their planning. So there is a bit of work going on there. But I think it's probably going to be whenever stage 3 kicks in, whatever amendments happen to their plan. But yeah, thank you for that question. Just checking the comments. Mark's also put a link to the COVID safe plan for the QPWS campgrounds there. Thanks, Mark. Benoni's also asked for camps for school-aged children, but not from one school. What's provided in the industry ed plan? So what's provided in there is the idea of if you can split your venue into 2 different zones, you can run 2 school groups at the one venue without allowing the kids from the different schools and the teachers and your own instructors from the different zones to interact. So that's all about basically putting a bubble around each group. So that's what we're talking about in there. And yep.
I'm asking a different question. We've got groups that come here, say for example, a sporting group, or let's even say schoolies, that are from all different schools. So they're all school aged, but they're all different schools here for one camp.
So looking at, as a relaxation of the social distancing, and also can we exceed the 100 group limit?
Under the industry plan, it only, that one of going above the 100 only applies to groups from the same school. So yeah, and potentially that won't work for you to do that under the industry plan. And that's, I guess, again, a decision on how you're going to do it. The issue is, and it all comes back to that traceability, they're really worried once the group sizes get above 100 at stage 3, as far as the traceability and everything else, and the potential spread of COVID-19, even with all the other controls in place. So it's really, I guess, a decision there to have a look at the rest of the industry plan and understand it. But if it is a group from a mixed sources, I suppose, of where the people are coming from, then under the plan it is capped at 100 people, but it isn't. It'd be a very difficult one to manage as far as Queensland Health's comfort level in approving it. So,
yeah, I guess we perceived that was the case. Am I clear that, it's Danny obviously, Dom, am I clear that, not Benoni, that within the zones we can have any group up to 100 in the zone that we want to, as long as we apply the correct industry plan or the roadmap provisions to that particular group? So what was originally in the ed plan was, no adult groups at the same time as kids. That disappeared, obviously.
Yeah, so what it's got in there is you can have multiple groups on there without having them intermingling, but you can have a group there at your site and have them, I guess, manage them in a way that works for that whole group. But you treat them virtually as a unit, and they just, you can get on with it, but you don't want your two different zones to intermingle, the groups in the different zones. So you can split your zone into activity groups or whatever, and have them do the activities at different times or that sort of thing, just for ease of management. So obviously you wouldn't have 100 people doing every activity at the same time. But the big part of that is making sure you've got the controls in place that are in the plan if you're going to opt into it.
Sure. Haven't looked at V11 yet, but you did say you had some feedback and some discussions. So does it look like multi-zoning with different types of groups in zones won't get any kickback? And was there any other outcomes of that feedback that we're not aware of?
No, so the big thing has been about the 1 per 4 square metres. Is there's a little concern about that, about relaxing it. And like I say, I've made the point that it's purely for kids, and I'm hoping that will get approved. Yeah, so that's the main thing. And as I say, I keep checking my emails and hoping for the best each time I go and have a look there. But yeah, we have got the exceeding the 100 limit in there for groups of school kids, particularly from
one.
Yeah,
That's all right. I appreciate that.
I just saw Darren's comment about 10,000 at the Gabba this weekend, and it's been mentioned. Don't worry, Darren. The interesting thing is, it's quite amazing the controls they've got in place for every person who's going to that. I've actually been speaking to one of the guys from Stadiums Queensland, and their controls are very impressive. I haven't been to a game, but they're actually treating it as they're better able to manage groups of the 2,000 they had last week. They said it was unbelievably good because they could split them up around a big stadium that can actually handle whatever, 40,000. But this week with 10,000, they've got some complications with public transport. But they said it was quite amazing. The interesting thing that public health people are more worried about is when sports come back, and if they're allowed to have more than 100 people, like maybe 500 at your local football field, which might not even have a fence. So the sporting stadiums are actually a very controlled environment comparatively to sporting fields and even national parks and that sort of thing. So that's why the number itself isn't the key part of that. It's the control measures that are able to be put in place. And those stadiums are already like fortified castles. So they have very good controls as far as what they do. So that's where they're getting comfortable with the numbers going up.
I think the argument, agreed. I just think the argument is we have exceptional controls, better. They've got mass group toilets. They've got mass public transport in and out. I even heard WA is planning a capacity crowded up to stadium of 60,000. So yes, the stadium, yes, they can control it. It's the to and from. We can actually, they're coming on a bus, but they're effectively controlled from the time they leave school to the time they get to us. Where we're exceptionally well controlled and safe. I just think, come on, if you're allowing 10,000 members of the public to gather, we're talking about 100, 150 from one controlled group. or 2 or 3 controlled groups. There's just got to be some consistency. It's getting a little out of hand. I think, yeah, it's coming. I can see Victoria and South Australia, West Australia, Tassie gone to 2 metres already. I'm just hoping Queensland pulls their finger out and gets on board.
Yeah.
We're controlling it well, probably better than anyone.
Yeah, and that is a point that is being made. And I think even the fact that it is a controlled environment, that's certainly a point I've been making. And it actually sets us from the outdoor eds world, sets us apart from the sport world. Like the community sport world, I think it's a really hard one as far as the reliance on venues that are literally in suburbia, and people's pastime has been to wander down on a Saturday afternoon and watch a game of footy, even if they don't know anyone playing there. That's what people do. So it's a really hard one if you don't have a fence around some of those fields. Some of the clubs are literally putting up temporary fencing right around their fields so they can control the access and egress from their fields, but then they're potentially creating choke points. So that they're really in a bad way. The sports are trying to manage it, but it's interesting because I've been trying to say, well, we don't have that problem. We are in a controlled situation as far as outdoor recreation as well, to a point. It's a little bit more difficult because there might be a choke point like the trailhead when you get to a national park or another area, but we can deal with that. So that's the point that I've been making. So yeah, but it's a good point. They're certainly relaxing some of these measures for the stadiums and that, but they're still saying even up in Townsville, because they haven't had a game yet, they're not at the 10,000 point. They've got to do a trial of 2,000, I think, this weekend. And if that goes well, then they might be allowed to go higher. So they are being careful on it. And I believe they even have compliance staff floating around in the crowd to check on how it's all going. So they're not just opening the gates and saying off you go. It's quite controlled. But yeah, I agree. I'm very much pushing for us to be in that same measure. I don't think we'll have groups of 10,000 anytime soon, but the sooner we get to events as well in the outdoor activity world, that's an important part of that too, as far as the event side of it. So that's the sort of change we're looking at for stage 3 once that comes along. I'm just checking the comments here. Yeah, no, public access certainly helps. How are group folks going to manage groups arriving to programming in vehicles while maintaining the 4 square metres? That one's a funny one, Jono. For some reason, the 4 square metres and the for social distancing doesn't apply on the bus itself, but it applies as soon as you get off the bus. So it's a weird old world. And I just saw David's comment about not getting too fussed about what other industries are doing unless we can learn from them. And it's a good point. And to say that we can justify what we're doing if something does go wrong. And it could happen, but let's, again, touch wood, hope it doesn't, and say we can get on with doing these activities and providing the positive services and health benefits that we do provide and education benefits. It's an important message that I think we need to get on the front foot with as far as ensuring that these activities are not just seen as a fun thing to do, even though it is fun, but also a vital part of what the community needs, especially coming out of the bushfires, but also COVID-19. The services that we offer as an industry are actually more critical now than ever. So, and that's not being dismissed particularly by the health authorities that I've spoken to. They certainly acknowledge that part of what we do, as far as it's a little bit different when they're considering our plans compared to, I think, the clubs and pubs. They can see there's a health benefit from our plan as well. I think that endears us to them. I just wish they'd actually hit the approval button sooner rather than later for the outdoor ed plan. But yeah, it's just a wait and see. We've got a couple of minutes left. Just wanted to throw it out there if anyone has any other topics. that's a nicer picture than that last slide full of words. But yeah, also just wanted to say we do have this co-branding opportunity. I've mentioned it a few times in the other ones. This is the agenda we had today. If anyone else has any other topics you want to talk about, I'm happy to keep talking about the industry plans and that. But if there's any other questions, please let me know, or any other topics. And we do have our COVID-19 web page, or it's web pages now. It's sort of developed over time. So there's actually pretty good resources on our website that Mark's done a lot of work on, and publishing documents, particularly related to COVID-19 and the recovery to that. So yeah, please check out our website. But also I can guarantee as soon as we know about the industry plans, changes to the current approved activity providers plan or approval for the outdoor ed plan, we will let you know. We'll broadcast that as swiftly as we can. It's certainly an important part of what we do to get that news out to everyone. I just noticed in the comments, Pete Smith has just mentioned that USC, when travelling in vehicles, it's only 2 persons per vehicle. So that's I guess another consideration. I don't know how that works when you've got a bus, but Pete's also again reminded everyone about Inside the Outhouse on Monday. So please, yeah, I think as Molly Melbourne would say, do yourself a favour and join that session. The insurance discussion that Pete mentioned earlier is a really important one right now. There's insurers who have discontinued covering outdoor activities, so we need to understand what the drivers are there and what difference we can make as an industry. It's just another blow on that one. David Maskell has just offered to speak on the community football world. Yeah, David, if you would like to fire away, that'd be great.
Hi, Dom, and hi everybody. I don't have a lot of inside information, but I'm involved heavily at the refereeing level with community football, and Football Queensland just in the last 3 days have released fixtures for the National Premier League and Football Queensland Premier League, with the expectation that the national government meeting that's happening today will actually release the 100 limit and make actually having those games physically possible at venues after the 10th of July. So I don't know if they have inside information, but there's a lot of organisations and a lot of money tied up in the gamble that's actually what the government's going to go ahead and do. So currently they're limited by 100 per venue, but in the current COVID plans that they have, they can put 60 by 3 lots of groups onto a football field to train. So it makes a lot of sense that once we go back into competition mode after the 10th of July, or a bit later for the NPL, that they're actually looking at or expecting that the government's going to say 300 or it's unlimited. So, but it's all he's saying. There's no inside knowledge from me. I'm just passing on what I know.
Thanks, David. I've heard a few little mutterings too, but again, nothing confirmed. The accommodation, the tourism accommodation plan is an interesting one that I've looked at, where it basically says as long as you can meet the 1 in 4 square meters, you can have your any number. Like, so if you have 1,000 square meters, you can have 250. The 100 cap doesn't apply there, which is a really interesting thing because all the way along it was a different story. But that's the 1 per 4 square meter rule, and that's where that's been powerful, I think. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in that space, particularly for our world and how it's going to work. So we're still, like I say, pushing back, saying no, we need the relaxation on that 1 per 4 square meters for school-aged children, but that's a key part of ours. Dave Chitty, you said you've got a quick topic.
Yeah, I've just posted a discussion on a couple of different forums, the leaders forums and outdoor operators forum, about how do we manage social distancing to protect our staff and teachers when we're working with kids or perhaps in other situations. And there's, so anyone that wants to comment down there, I think if we talk, we might come up with better solutions. And there's the industry happy hour at 4 o'clock tonight that Laurie's facilitating, if you want to hop onto that and have a chat about things in an informal environment.
Yeah, I never give that one a plug. I should add that to my list, David, shouldn't I? The happy hour. It is a good thing, yeah. Laurie from Outdoors New South Wales. I never seem to be on that one. I think I've had meetings just about every time, or I've just fallen in a heap on a Friday afternoon. So I've never joined the social happy hour option, but yeah, thank you for mentioning that one. Does anyone else have any other topics that you wanted to questions or even other things that are going on that wanted to talk about? Oh, Mark's just asked, is there a happy hour link? You know, David, if there's a...
Yeah, I think it's on the outdoor activity operators, providers, managers website, but Laurie could probably mention. Is Laurie still on?
No, I think she had to go for another meeting.
Yeah,
but,
so yeah, it's on the outdoor activity providers Facebook page anyway. That's where it certainly gets posted.
Yeah, righto. Okay, thank you. Well, we might see if we can dig that up and share it as well. With a bit of luck, we'll also be sharing information on approval of this plan, but I'm the fingers are crossed, but the breath isn't being held yet. So we'll see what comes of that. If we can, we'll obviously get that out to everyone as soon as it's approved. If you've got queries once it is approved, please get in touch with me. Get in touch with us, I should say. I probably should say again, a big thank you to everyone who put the work in to those plans, who joined us for the Zoom sessions, also a number of phone calls. The people who've really given their time to try to get this plan finalised and approved, I really do want to say a big thank you to everyone who's had a hand in that, and that's certainly been appreciated. There's been a lot of work going to all those plans, obviously, but yeah, we might just wrap it up there. Actually, you get an early mark, a couple of minutes, and we'll be in touch if there's news. We'll certainly share it. We'll try to share that happy hour link, but also the Inside the Outhouse on Monday, and I look forward to seeing you all shortly.